Lately, things in my family have been really messed up. But to get why it's hitting me so hard, you need to know the backstory. I'm 33, a guy, and I grew up with my younger brother, Alex, who's 30. From the outside, we looked like a normal family, but behind closed doors, things were really messed up. Alex was the miracle baby. My mom had a really tough pregnancy with him, and he was super sick for the first few years of his life. Constantly in and out of the hospital with breathing issues, infections, you name it. I remember spending a lot of time in hospital waiting rooms as a kid. I get it, having a sick kid is terrifying. But even after Alex got better, my parents, especially my dad, treated him like he was fragile and could break at any moment. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the perfect, responsible older brother. If Alex skipped school, it was, he needs his rest. If he failed a class, it was, he's been through so much. If he broke something expensive, it was, don't be mad at your brother. But me, I had to get straight A's, never talk back, help out around the house, and basically act like an adult from the time I was 7. The double standards were crazy, and it messed with me a lot. I remember this one time in high school when I got detention for being late to class just once, and my parents grounded me for a whole week. But that same month, Alex got caught skipping school to hang out with his friends at the mall, and all he got was a talk from my parents. It was so unfair. When I was 15, I started working with my dad in his electrical business. It wasn't because I was super into being an electrician back then. It was more about trying to get some attention or approval from him. And you know what? I actually got really good at it. I put in the effort, stayed late to watch Dad handle the complicated stuff, read manuals, and even watched YouTube videos to learn more. Meanwhile, Alex, he was smart when he wanted to be, but he had zero work ethic. He could charm anyone with his poor little sick kid act, which he never outgrew. He tried college for about 2 semesters, dropped out because it was too stressful, started some online business selling dropship junk that flopped, and then tried day trading only to lose a bunch of Dad's money. But somehow, I was still the one getting lectures about supporting your brother and family comes first. Honestly, it left me feeling this weird mix of resentment and responsibility. I loved Alex because he's my brother, but I also couldn't stand being around him most of the time. We were complete opposites. I was the serious, hardworking one who believed in keeping my word and doing things right. He was the fun one who never faced consequences and thought rules were for everyone else. Dad's business was steady, mostly residential electrical work and some light commercial jobs. Nothing flashy, but it paid the bills. I saw potential in it, though. When I wasn't out on jobs, I was teaching myself about new technology, smart home systems, security installations, stuff like that. Dad was old school, sticking to the way he'd always done things, but I kept pushing to modernize and take on bigger projects. The crazy part? Even when I brought in new clients or nailed big jobs, Dad would somehow give Alex credit. Like, your brother's charm really helps with customer relations. Alex answered phones sometimes. Or, Alex has such good ideas for the business. He suggested we get a website. In 2020, it was frustrating, to say the least. I moved out as soon as I could afford it, getting my own place about 20 minutes from my parents. Close enough to help with the business but far enough to have some breathing room. I thought I was doing pretty well for myself. I had my own apartment, was making decent money, learning new skills, and even thinking about getting my master electrician license and maybe starting my own business someday. Then I met Sophie, I'll call her that, about 6 years ago. She was the property manager at these luxury apartments downtown where we had a big rewiring job. The first time I saw her, she was going off on some HVAC guys about their shoddy work, getting into the technical details of why their installation wasn't up to code. I remember thinking, damn, she actually knows her stuff. Most property managers just wanted things done cheap and fast, but Sophie was different. She'd actually read through all the electrical codes and knew exactly what she wanted. It was impressive. For the first couple of weeks on the job, Sophie kept coming around to check our work. Not in a nagging way, but because she was genuinely interested in understanding what we were doing and why. I started timing my lunch breaks to match her rounds so we could chat. At first, we talked about the project, but then the conversations shifted to other things. She told me about growing up with her dad, who was a general contractor, and how she learned all about construction by helping him on jobs. I shared my plans for modernizing my dad's business and maybe branching out into more commercial work. She was easy to talk to, you know? I could vent about my family drama, and she totally got it. Her brother was the golden child too, some hotshot lawyer who could do no wrong. We even joked about starting a support group for the responsible siblings. When we finished the apartment job, I thought that would be the end of it. But about a week later, She called the office about an urgent electrical issue at her personal apartment. Dad sent me to check it out, and it turned out there wasn't actually anything wrong. She just wanted to see me again. I've got to admit, it was a pretty smooth move. We started dating after that. Sophie was different from anyone else I'd dated. She didn't play games or expect me to guess what she was thinking. If something was bothering her, she'd just say it. If she was happy, you knew it. Plus, she actually cared about my work. She helped me study for my licensing exams and even started pitching in with the business side of things. Within a year, she was basically running our office. She set up a new scheduling system, modernized our invoicing, and created proper contracts instead of the handwritten quotes we used to do. Dad wasn't thrilled about it at first. He liked doing everything on paper, but even he had to admit the business was running smoother because of her. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something real, you know? Sophie and I moved in together after 2 years, and we started talking about marriage and maybe having kids someday. She'd even joke about our future kids becoming electricians too, carrying on the family business. I really thought I had it all figured out. The funny thing is, my family actually liked her at first. My mom was always inviting us over for dinner, asking Sophie for help with computer stuff or her opinion on home improvements. Even Dad warmed up to her once he saw how much she was helping the business grow. We were landing bigger contracts, getting more commercial work, and building a solid reputation in the area. Sophie even got along with Alex. She'd defend him sometimes when I'd get frustrated about his latest failed scheme, saying I should try to understand his perspective more and how growing up sick might have affected him. Looking back now, I should have seen that as a red flag, but when you trust someone completely, you don't want to see the signs. We got engaged after 4 years together. It wasn't anything fancy. I proposed at home after we finished this huge project we'd been working on together. She'd been helping me plan a major electrical upgrade for a local hospital, staying up late with me to go over plans and deal with contractors. Felt right, like we were true partners in everything. But about a year ago, things started to change. Alex had burned through another chunk of Dad's money trying to start some crypto trading business. He came back home broke again, and Dad gave him a job in our office, just basic stuff like answering phones, filing paperwork, and scheduling appointments. It should have been simple enough, but of course, Alex found ways to mess it up. Sophie started spending more time at my parents' house, helping my mom with wedding planning and saying it was easier to work on the business paperwork there since Alex was learning the systems. I was busy with jobs most days, so it seemed to make sense at the time. But then, about 8 months before everything fell apart, I started noticing little things that felt off. Sophie was at my parents' house more often, saying she was training Alex on the new invoice system and helping Mom with wedding plans. I didn't think much of it. I was out working most days, trying to save up for our future. We were planning the wedding and talking about buying a house. I wanted to do everything right. Then other small changes started happening. Sophie changed her phone password. She'd never been secretive about her phone before. We both knew each other's passwords. No big deal. But suddenly she got weird about it. She said her banking app needed her to update security or something. I trusted her completely, so I didn't think much of it at the time. Then Alex started acting different too. He began wearing cologne to work. This is the same guy who used to show up in yesterday's clothes half the time. He got all these new outfits, started showing up to work on time, which was not like him. He was also being weirdly nice to me, offering to stay late at the office and saying he really wanted to learn the business. I also noticed Sophie talking about him differently. She'd say things like, "Alex is really getting good at handling the scheduling," or "Your brother's actually pretty smart when he applies himself." She'd even get defensive if I complained about him messing something up and started taking his side in family arguments. The office vibe got weird too. Our receptionist, Janet, she's been with us for 15 years and is like a second mom, started giving me these looks whenever Sophie and Alex were working late together. But whenever I'd ask her what was up, she'd just say, "Nothing," and change the subject. One time, I came back to the office early from a job because we ran out of materials. Sophie and Alex were in the break room, laughing about something. Nothing obviously wrong, but they both jumped like they'd been caught doing something when I walked in. Sophie said they were just going over some invoices. At 7 p.m.? Yeah, right. I also started noticing that Sophie didn't talk about our future as much. She used to be all excited about wedding plans, looking at houses online, and talking about the kind of family we'd have. But she got quiet about all that, saying she was just stressed about work. The real red flag I ignored was that she stopped coming to job sites to check on projects. It used to be our thing. She'd bring lunch, we'd go over plans, and figure out solutions to problems together. But suddenly, she was too busy at the office with Alex. About 6 months ago, we had this big family dinner. Sophie was acting weird all night, barely talking and checking her phone a lot. Alex kept trying to make these inside jokes with her. At one point, he said something about that crazy guy at the office, and Sophie actually snorted laughing. But when I asked what was funny, they both just said, "You had to be there." After dinner, on the car ride home, I finally brought it up. "You okay? You seemed off tonight." Sophie kept staring at her phone. "Just tired. Work's been crazy." I said, "Yeah. Seems like you and Alex are getting along better these days." She kind of tensed up but tried playing it casual. "He's not as bad as you always say. He's actually pretty funny when you get to know him." I replied, "Funny enough to make you ignore everyone else at dinner?" She snapped back, "What's that supposed to mean?" I said, "Nothing. Just, you've been different lately. Distant. Always on your phone." She got defensive real quick. "Oh, so I'm not allowed to have my own conversations now? Everything has to be about you." That caught me off guard. Sophie never talked to me like that before. I said, "That's not what I said. Just feels like something's changed." She shot back, "Maybe you're just paranoid. I'm tired of you always complaining about Alex. He's trying his best." I remember this awful feeling in my stomach, like something was really off, but I couldn't figure out what. She'd never stood up for Alex like that before. "Since when are you on Alex's side?" I asked. "Since I actually got to know him instead of just listening to you trash him all the time." She shot back. The rest of the car ride was dead silent. Looking back, all the signs were there. Her defensiveness, her phone always buzzing, the inside jokes, her sudden praise for Alex. But you never want to believe someone you trust completely could betray you like that. Especially not with your own brother. That night, I lay in bed, watching her pretend to sleep, thinking, no, I'm just overthinking this. The next few months were more of the same. Sophie working late, Alex suddenly taking an interest in the business, and me, clueless, working 12-hour days to save up for our future while my brother was stealing my girlfriend right under my nose. Then, one Tuesday, everything blew up. I was at work rewiring a warehouse when Sophie called around 2 p.m., crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said she needed to talk to me in person. It was urgent. My first thought was something had happened to her parents. I told my crew it was a family emergency and rushed home. I found her sitting in her car in the driveway. She wouldn't come inside, just sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding her together. I got in the passenger seat, waiting for her to say something. "I'm pregnant," she said. For a second, I was overjoyed. We talked about starting a family after the wedding, and now it was happening. I started rambling about how we'd figure it out, maybe move the wedding up. But she just kept crying. "There's more," she choked out. It might not be yours." Everything inside me froze. My brain couldn't process it at first. "Might not be mine?" I asked, my voice sounding strange. "Who else's would it?" Then it hit me. The late nights, the secrecy with her phone, the tension whenever I brought up. "No." I stared at her, waiting for her to deny it, to tell me I was wrong. She didn't. "Tell me it's not him," I said, my voice sharp. "Tell me it's not Alex." She made this broken sound. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh right, you just tripped and fell into my brother's bed." "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "It was one time." I cut her off. "One time? Tell me the truth." Silence. "How long?" I asked, my voice tight. Her breathing was shaky. 3 months. Maybe 4. I pressed my hands to my knees to steady myself. "Does he know?" She nodded. "I told him yesterday. That's when I realized I had to tell you too." I stared at her, like she expected me to thank her for finally coming clean. I got out of the car, needing air. She followed me, trying to explain how it wasn't planned, how guilty they felt, how they'd ended it weeks ago. All I could think about was them laughing in the break room during all those late nights. "Were you ever going to tell me if you weren't pregnant?" I asked. She didn't answer. That told me everything. I got in my truck and drove straight to my parents' house. I found Alex in the office doing nothing as usual. As soon as he saw my face, he knew I knew. "Listen, bro, I can explain. I don't really remember what happened next. It's all a blur, but I remember him on the ground, blood coming from his nose. My dad and 2 employees pulled me off him. Alex started yelling about how I was crazy, how Sophie came onto him first, how they were in love. In love. My own brother, the guy who'd watched me plan my future with her, who'd sat at Sunday dinners knowing what he was doing. My dad stepped between us, trying to calm everyone down. saying we needed to handle this like adults. That's when Alex dropped the bomb. She's having my baby. You can't just ignore that. My dad's face went white. Guess he didn't know about that part yet. My mom started crying. Janet, one of our employees, grabbed her purse and walked out. I found out later she quit that day, saying she couldn't work for people who do something like this. I looked at my dad and said, "He's your problem now. I'm done." My dad tried to stop me. "Son, wait. We can figure this out. Family is family." I told him, Alex stopped being my family the second he touched my fiancée. I walked out and haven't been back since. When I got home, Sophie was still there. She'd packed some bags and was sitting on the couch crying. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "It just got complicated." I told her she had 24 hours to get her stuff and leave. I didn't care where she went. Block my number, lose my address. "What about the baby?" she asked. "Better hope it's Alex's," I said. "Because if it's mine, we're doing a DNA test and going through lawyers." She tried to say more, but I just walked out. I drove to my buddy Mike's place and crashed there for a few days while she moved out. After everything that happened, I crashed at my friend Mike's place for about a week. I turned my phone off because I just needed some time to sort things out in my head. Mike was awesome. He didn't try to give me advice or anything, just let me stay without making a big deal out of it. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had around 50 missed calls. Mostly from my parents, a few from Sophie, and even some from Alex. Can you believe that guy? I only listened to the voicemails from my mom. She sounded really upset, crying and begging me to come talk to my dad because he had some kind of solution. I should have known my dad's solution would be some manipulative nonsense. But I went anyway because my mom sounded so broken. Walking into the house felt strange. Everyone was in the living room. My mom looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. My dad was sitting in his usual recliner, looking all serious, like he does when he's about to lecture someone. Alex was there too, with a nice shiner on his nose. I'm not gonna lie, seeing that felt pretty good. My dad cleared his throat and dropped this bombshell. "Son, I've been thinking about how to fix this situation in a way that works for everyone. Since you're clearly not willing to work things out with Sophie, and considering her condition, I think it makes sense for her and Alex to get married." I couldn't help it. I laughed right in his face. But he wasn't done. "Also, since they'll be starting a family, I think it's only fair for Alex to take over the business. With Sophie's experience running the office and Alex learning the ropes, they could." I cut him off. "He can't even wire a simple outlet without someone holding his hand." My dad got that look he always gets when someone interrupts him. "Watch your language, and your brother has shown real interest in learning. In fact, I want you to train him." I completely lost it. I started laughing again. But it was that kind of crazy laugh you do when something is so messed up you can't even believe it's real. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You want me to train the guy who slept with my fiancée to take over the business I helped build, while they're married and raising a kid that might actually be mine? Are you out of your mind?" My mom started crying again, and Alex just sat there staring at the floor like the coward he is. Then my dad played his final card. "The business is still in my name. If you won't help your brother, maybe you should find somewhere else to work." That's when it hit me. All the years I'd put into that business, the clients I brought in, the reputation I built. None of it mattered compared to my dad's golden boy, Alex, and his latest mess up. I just stood up and walked to the door. My mom tried to stop me, but I said, "I'm done. Good luck with your new dream team." Alex finally spoke up. "Bro, wait." I turned around and said, "Call me bro again, and I'll do more than break your nose." My dad yelled something about loyalty and second chances as I walked out, but I didn't even look back. The next day, I started calling all the major clients I had personal relationships with. I told them I was leaving and recommended some other contractors they could work with. My dad called me, screaming about how I was trying to ruin the business. I told him I was just letting my clients know I wouldn't be handling their jobs anymore. If they didn't want to work with his new dream team, that wasn't my problem. Alex and Sophie actually went along with all of this. They got married at the courthouse 2 weeks later, acting like it was some kind of romantic fairy tale instead of the total betrayal it was. My dad even supported them, giving them money for a down payment on a house, like he was rewarding them for what they'd done. Meanwhile, I was left picking up the pieces of my life, expected to just move on while they played happy family. No apologies, no real consequences, just me being pushed aside. So I walked away. I took a job with one of our old competitors, a place that actually appreciated my skills instead of treating me like I didn't matter. The pay was better, the respect was real, And best of all, there was no family drama. I threw myself into starting fresh, building my own reputation. I even got my master electrician license, something my dad always said I wasn't ready for. Turns out I was more than ready. I just needed to step out of his shadow to prove it. For about 4 months, I didn't hear much about what was going on with the family business. My mom would text me sometimes, but I asked her not to mention Alex or Sophie. I didn't need that kind of stress in my life. Then last week my mom called me late at night crying. She said my dad needed to talk to me urgently. I almost hung up, but she sounded really upset. "Please," she said. "I know you have every right to say no, but we're about to lose everything." I was curious, so I stayed on the line. When my dad got on the phone, he sounded completely different. Not his usual confident, know-it-all self. He sounded defeated. Turns out, letting Alex run the business was exactly the disaster I knew it would be. Alex had managed to mess up 3 major jobs so badly that one client was threatening to sue over code violations. We're talking basic mistakes, wrong wiring, missing ground wires, uncovered junction boxes. The kind of stuff that could start a fire. And instead of hiring qualified electricians, Alex brought in his college drinking buddy as the head electrician. The guy's only experience was changing light bulbs, no license, no certifications, nothing. Real professional, right? Then there was the money situation. Alex had forgotten to pay the liability insurance. In an electrical business, that's a huge deal. One accident, one fire, and they'd lose everything. But instead of paying for insurance, Alex was pocketing cash payments from customers and not recording them. He'd also taken out loans against the business without telling my dad, multiple loans, for a lot of money. And no one could figure out where all that cash went. It wasn't in his bank account, it wasn't invested, it was just gone. Though I'm pretty sure his new car and designer wardrobe might give some clues. It's almost impressive how Alex managed to destroy everything in just a few months. My dad spent 30 years building that business, and Alex practically burned it to the ground in less than half a year. I guess that's what happens when you hand over a successful company to someone whose biggest accomplishment was being beer pong team captain in college. My dad finally found out when their insurance got canceled, and he started looking into the books. Alex had been hiding all the problems by messing with the paperwork, something he probably learned from Sophie during their late nights at the office. Most of the experienced guys had quit, can't blame them. Alex treated them like garbage, and their paychecks started bouncing. Janet, our old receptionist, had tried warning my dad months ago about weird stuff in the accounts, but he didn't listen. Now he's finally realizing the mess he's in. Dad's voice was trembling when he told me everything. Then he dropped the bomb. "Son, I need you to come back. Help me fix this. I'll make you the majority owner. You'll have full control." I told him I needed time to think. He started panicking. "Please, we're going to lose everything. The business, the house, everything I've worked for. Your mom. She's not handling this well." Then he hit me with the final blow. Alex and Sophie split up. She left last week without a word. Just a note saying not to contact her. The baby? No one even knows where she is. Turns out, Alex wasn't cut out to be a dad after all. My response? Not my problem anymore. Dad tried to guilt-trip me about family and loyalty, like he always does. I shut him down. Remember when I begged you not to hand the business to Alex? When I told you he'd ruin it? What did you say? "Oh yeah, family is family." Well, now it's your family's mess to deal with. Mom got on the phone, crying about how they might end up homeless. That got to me. Mom doesn't deserve any of this. She's the only one who ever tried to keep the family together, the only one who stayed neutral, even when maybe she shouldn't have. I told her she could come stay with me anytime. Just her, though, not Dad or Alex. "I can't leave your father," she said. I sighed. "Then that's your choice, Mom. But my door is only open for you." It hurt knowing she'd never walk through it. A few days later, I got a text from Sophie. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need help. The baby's yours." I got the test results. Alex took all my money and disappeared. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." I read it, stared at it, and put my phone down. I didn't reply. I'm not going to. But it sat there like a weight in my stomach. Like a punch I saw coming but still didn't know how to handle. It should have felt like a big deal. It should have changed everything. But all I felt was tired. Like I'd finally climbed out of this mess, only for it to drag me back in. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what to do. While I was still trying to process all this chaos, Dad showed up at my apartment last night. No warning. Just standing there when I got home from work, looking rough. He was wearing this old jacket I remember from when I was a kid, and he hadn't shaved in weeks. The first thing I noticed was he was driving Mom's old Civic instead of his truck. I found out later they had to sell his truck to pay off some business debts. "Can we talk?" he asked, not in his usual demanding tone. He actually sounded exhausted. I let him in because, honestly, I wanted him to see how well I was doing without his help. "My new place is nice. I got it after my last promotion, nothing fancy, but it's mine. I earned it on my own." He stood in my living room, looking lost, like he didn't know how to talk to me without giving orders. Finally, he sat down and just started spilling everything. "The business is basically done for. They're facing lawsuits from 2 commercial clients because of Alex's shoddy work. Most of their residential customers bailed after hearing about half-finished jobs. The bank's coming for the house next month." "I should have listened to you," he said. It was the first time I'd ever heard him admit he was wrong about anything. I told him it was nice to hear, but way too late. Then he pulled out a folder. Inside was paperwork to sign the business over to me, 100% ownership, no strings attached. "You can save it," he said. "You always knew what you were doing. I was just too proud to see it. You know what's crazy? 6 months ago, this would have been everything I wanted. Finally being in control, Dad admitting I was right. But sitting there, looking at those papers, I asked, 'What happened to Alex?' Dad's face just fell. He said Alex emptied their savings account last week and disappeared. Left some note about needing to find himself or some nonsense. Classic Alex. Creates a disaster, then runs away from the fallout." "He's still your brother," Dad said quietly. "No, he stopped being my brother the day he decided family loyalty meant nothing to him." Sound familiar? That hit him hard. Good. He started talking about how we could rebuild the business together, how we could be a real family again. I had to laugh. "Dad, you're not listening. I don't want the business. I don't want your help. I'm done. But this is your legacy too. Everything we built. Everything I built you gave to Alex. Remember? You chose him even after he slept with my fiancée. Now you get to live with that choice." Dad tried to guilt trip me again, bringing up Mom and how heartbroken she is about the family falling apart. I repeated what I'd said before. "She's always welcome here, just her. She won't leave me," he said. I told him, "Then that's her choice. And living with the consequences of your actions, that's yours." He sat there for a long time, silent. Finally, he asked, barely above a whisper, "Where did I go wrong?" Part of me wanted to unload everything. The years of favoritism, the endless excuses for Alex, how he handed the business to someone who saw it as a cash cow while I actually cared about it. But what's the point? You didn't go wrong, Dad. You got exactly what you always wanted. Alex in charge. How's that working out for you? He left not long after that. He looked like he'd aged 20 years by the time he walked out the door. This morning, I got a text from Mom. They're moving in with her sister in Ohio next month. Dad's gonna try to find work there. She asked one more time if I'd reconsider helping them stay here. I told her my offer still stands. She can come stay with me anytime, but I'm done setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. Sophie still messages me sometimes about the baby. I told her to have her lawyer contact mine. I haven't heard from Alex, and I don't expect to. You know what's strange? I thought watching them lose everything would feel satisfying, like karma finally catching up to them for what they did to me. But honestly, I just feel nothing. Not happy, not sad, just done. I started seeing someone new last month. We're taking it slow. She asked about my family, and I just said, we're not close. Maybe someday I'll tell her the whole story. But for now, I'm focused on building my own life. No drama. No toxic family nonsense. No chasing after approval that was never coming. I told Sophie everything has to go through the lawyers from now on. Will I step up for my kid? Yeah, I'm not my brother. I don't run from my responsibilities. But Sophie burned that bridge to the ground. We'll figure out custody and support through the courts. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them, just like everyone else in this mess. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head straight, focus on work, my new relationship, and building something that's truly mine. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about how messed up it is that my kid's going to be born into all this chaos. But you can't fix other people's mistakes. You can only try to do right by your own conscience. And sometimes, the best revenge is just living well.